So my next thing I want to do is I need to make sure that I have my center line marked on here. Usually I've done that before this stage, but for some reason I haven't done that yet. And so I'm going to, probably starting right here. So the center of my neck should be basically centered with the middle of this tenon on the end. So the tenon's about half an inch. Actually, it's a hair under half an inch. I'll measure that at 1/4 and just look and make sure that it appears to be right in the middle. So my center's marked there. Now I'm going to get a marking gauge, and I'll show you how to use that. Okay, this tool here is called a marking gauge. See, there's a sharp point at one end, and then you have this piece that adjusts this way. So I take my marking gauge, and I'm going to just put this sharp point in right where my center line was on my ukulele neck here. And that looks good. So the way you use a marking gauge is you take this and don't put it straight in, but just kind of score it at an angle, holding this against the edge, and it scores a line. I don't know if you can see that in the video or not, but you can make your line that way. And I can actually take my pencil in the groove that I just made, and it should show a nice straight line right there. So that way I know where the center is when I go to mark out my template. And while I'm at it, it's going to help with my carving later. I want to go ahead and mark my center on this, on the back of it. So hold on, I'm going to double check and make sure. What I forget is, yep, that's still set, stay on the same edge, and I can mark the center right up here, and I can mark the center along the back of the neck here. And it's not real visible, but I want to be able to see that later on. Now I can't go up this back here because this overlaps right here. Otherwise, I would want to go ahead and mark that, and maybe later I'll mark that. But at least I have this center right here, which is really helpful. So now I can take my fretboard template right here and line it up with the center at this end, and I'm going to make a little mark so I know better where that center is, right up there. And I can line it up with the center line down at this end, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace that shape right there. Trace it nice and dark, because you're going to have me actually make this cut for you on the bandsaw, and sometimes I have a hard time seeing the pencil lines on the bandsaw over there. Maybe the lighting's not perfect, so I make that nice and dark. And then at this point, you can bring this to me and ask me to cut it, and I will cut it for you. And then the other thing that we can do, and I'll have you do this yourself, is I'm going to need to put this shape, and again I can line that up right on the center, and I can trace out the shape of the headstock. But tracing it on the front of this won't help. I can't cut with the lines on that side. I actually have to turn this over to the other side. So then again, that's nice to have a center line there. But I did mark some of that there. I might even just, it's not super dark, but you see it in places, and it's something we need to have to reference later when we start to carve it. I can mark that. I know that's my center there, and then I can lay this template in that location on the center, and In fact, in this case, you can see my headstock's a little short for my template, so I'm going to move it down this way. That's okay, I can make my headstock just a little shorter. That's not going to hurt anything, I don't think. So I'm going to go ahead and trace out that shape. And then you can, at the bandsaw, you can go ahead and cut that shape out before or after I cut my part on the bandsaw. Nice if I draw my lines so I can actually see them. Alright, so that looks better. We can cut that out now. Okay, so I cut this part here on the bandsaw first. Remember, you're going to have me do that for you. Then I went to this smaller bandsaw and I laid the headstock down like this here. And I cut the shape out. Now you can see here, I think you can see, that there are, you can see the pencil lines here. If you flip it over, you can really tell this doesn't look very symmetrical, the headstock. So I want to go to the spindle sander and maybe the wide or the horizontal belt sander and sand perfectly, if I can, right to my lines everywhere. One area I want to be careful of, that I have lots of students make mistakes, is right here and here. Sometimes they sand in so far there that they end up with a little weird divot right here where it joins in with that. We want that to stay flush right here with the neck. If you look on the other side, you can see that there are pencil marks here still. I left those on purpose. I don't want my neck to be finished size yet, but I do want it to be fairly even and symmetrical and very, very close to being where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to head to the sander for a minute. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start sanding these curves here on the spindle sander. So a little bit at a time. I just want to get right up to my line. So I'm as accurate as I can possibly be. I do want the whole thing to look nice and symmetrical and pretty when we look at the ukulele in the end here. That's pretty good in those two spots. Now it's time to go ahead and put holes in the headstock where the tuning machines are going to go. So I can take my template here and I can line it up. I'm going to take my scratch awl, and I've already done this so I'm not going to do it now, but I put it in there in the center of each of those holes, make a little indentation in all four of those holes. So now I look closely here and I can see each of those, and I like to look at them and make sure they look like they're going straight across the headstock and not doing something weird, because once I drill those holes, it's kind of where they are. And if the tuning machines look crooked later on, that's kind of what they'll happen. They'll look crooked. We don't want that. So I check that out. I'll make sure their holes are really where I want them before I drill. And then to drill, I'm going to clamp this to a block. And then I can go ahead and drill with the hand drill. I'm using a brad point bit. This is a certain size. In fact, I made a little green mark on there so I know which bit it is. So make sure you get the right bit for me. And I want to just be careful to know that I'm drilling straight. Do all four of those holes, just like that.